Oregon. Okay.
There's got to be for Minnesota.
Oh, we're on. We're on there, tough guy. And you don't talk over live at Leeds, JT.
My apologies.
Oh, that's
the guy I
right.
was listening to.
Yeah. Well, Live at Hull is supposed to be released this year, so I'm really looking forward to that. Someone pointed that out on the forum. Well, you're listening to the only show on the air dedicated to bringing about a voluntary society. This is the No State Project, where we're sticking to the man one show at a time. And we're talking about tickets, tyrants, and assessments. And, JT, we got a new sponsor to the show.
Who's that?
Well, I'm going to mess this up, and everyone's going to have to understand. This will sound absolutely correct to you if you are born and raised in the American Northeast. Evolve Cigs, they of evolvecigs.com, and it's an electronic cigarette that gives you the freedom to enjoy smoking anywhere, but it's not real smoke. So at airports, restaurants, movies, theaters, sporting events, and even in courtrooms, the company owner has even personally used his in his local public health department. Every Evolve starter kit comes with 2 batteries, 2 atomizers, 5 flavor tips of your choice, and a personal charging case that charges your batteries on the go and stores 5 flavor tips. So join the revolution and the evolution. I like that. The evolution of smoking today with evolvecigs.com. That's EVOLCIGS.com. evolvecigs.com. Join the revolution today. And I want to thank him for the opportunity and in support of the show. So definitely go and support him at evolvecigs.com. So if you're a smoker and you want to quit, and you should, go to evolvecigs.com today. Talk about people who should quit. Oh my gosh. I announced on the show last week, and we missed you, of course.
Sorry I missed you.
Well, yeah, it happens. We understand. You're one of the productive of society.
I try to be.
And that kind of, that happens. But I announced on the show that I was going to be doing one of the, speaking with a hearing officer on Tuesday morning.
Okay. And her name was, let's just say, wait a minute. Yeah, her name was Cathy. And I'm doing a lot of these calls, JT, like I mentioned. So I want to get a video of the 34-minute call first. I'm going to chop that up and do some commentary to, with the more important points that are made in that. But with all these calls, so I don't have as much time, to just sit around like you and mess around. So anyway, I will get this phone call up in its entirety. Okay, it's a good one. So it was supposed to be an administrative hearing, hearing with the hearing officer, and it wasn't a full blown thing where you'd have witnesses and things like that, because of course we are dealing with the IRS. And she said, this is something I always tell everybody. What you want to make sure that you're doing is you got to know what the ground rules are. You have to know. Look, if you're looking to get an assessment thrown out, don't go looking into the code or reading the Supreme. You don't need to. You don't really need to do that. Just ask the agent point blank to tell you, look, Miss Hearing Officer, what are the grounds to have an assessment thrown out here today? What do you need? And this is something that I did with a client a couple months ago, and the hearing officer would not tell me what the grounds were. So we're actually doing that again on this Wednesday. So I'm really looking for that. That's going to be a good one. But this hearing officer had at least the dignity and the integrity, rather, to tell me that if there was no evidence that the client was a taxpayer and a taxable income, then she would make a recommendation that they do not make an assessment. Right? Sounds fair.
Sounds fair. Now, now, what she told me was she could not make a decision. All she could do was make a recommendation. So she could either recommend that the assessment be thrown out, that there not be an assessment, or she would make a recommendation that there should be an assessment. Okay?
Okay.
Now, I started asking her the questions, similar to what I did, of course, with Kimberly, who was the attorney. And Cathy's not an attorney. I want to point out she's not a lawyer. So it was even easier. She even said that she's not an attorney. She said she didn't know. She admitted that there were differences factually between income and taxable income, but she admitted she didn't know what they were. And She said at one point, I do it. She says, I wrote this down. It was so funny. I'm getting flustered.
Well, I can imagine you would.
Well, if I was BSing and someone, and I threw out a line of BS here on the show and somebody called me up and called me on it, I'd probably get flustered too.
Yeah, I would too.
That's why we talk about it on the show. We keep it empirical, and every time we go into the land of speculation and opinion, we announce that.
Right.
Okay. I usually have Calvin cut that out of the podcast, but live, we that's what we got. So she admitted she wasn't qualified, and that she changed her mind. She was not going to make a recommendation at all.
Really? Why?
She didn't feel she was qualified to do that. Wow.
Okay.
Wow. I know. So here I am.
So why am I wasting my time with you, lady?
Well, that's what your initial reaction is.
Sure.
So I had said, well, look, you said at the beginning that if there was no evidence, because she wouldn't discuss the evidence, beyond that. I said, you told us that, if there was no evidence, you would make a recommendation not to do an assessment. Well, if you can't determine that there's evidence, then just be consistent with what you said earlier and, just make a recommendation for no assessment. She wouldn't do it. But now, I don't want to put this is my take on it after speaking to her. Okay. So before, we'll say, well, look, let's give it a benefit of the doubt here. Most of the time you talk to these people, though, JT, they are hell-bent on finding you guilty or that you're a taxpayer and have taxable income.
Well, they walk into it feeling that way and thinking that way, sure.
Right. But does she feel that way about my client now?
Probably not.
No.
Not so much.
Well, she is at a point where, unlike a lot of them, she's not going to recommend an assessment.
Okay.
So I think that's pretty good.
I do, too. Is she going to recommend abatement then?
Well, that's the thing. She's not making a recommendation at all. She's just going to transfer it. She's going to transfer it to counsel.
Okay.
However, I think it holds a lot of weight. And we're doing we're going to do a follow up in writing that she changed her mind and not so we'll get that in on Monday that she change her mind and not make and actually make a recommendation to that look, she's not qualified to do this. She can't determine if there's any evidence. If you can't determine if there's any evidence there, then you have to, like according to what she said, you have to recommend no assessment.
Right.
So we're gonna push for that.
Okay.
So we'll see what happens. So I think, I left the call, and after hearing part of it again, I felt pretty good about it.
You should, absolutely.
Yeah, we put the brakes on where they're not going to, they don't want to recommend an assessment. I think that's big. I think that's pretty
absolutely.
big. I'd like to have gotten her to make a recommendation in plain English, but I think no recommendation, at least that says she's not recommending that they go after him any further.
Right.
So I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, it is absolutely. Stop it, and if it just dies in the vine, that's a win.
That's pretty good. Yeah,
absolutely.
But we also have now. Remember, she's looking at both sides of the equation here, guys. I want everyone to understand and maybe give a little more context because this is something that is going to be heard in court. We have the hearing officer who's looking at both sides. She's looking at my client's, what he's put in, and she's looking at what the IRS has.
Right.
And she can't determine that there's taxable income and that he's a taxpayer.
Okay.
So I think that's going to hold some order. We then so we also spoke to a number of other agents that week and their supervisors. So I want to get back to that when we return. My name is Mark Stevens. This is the No State Project where we're sticking to the man one show at a time. You don't want to go away. We're going to talk more about the IRS. And we had 2 tickets thrown out that we're going to talk about. So you're going to want to hear the details on that. The mysteriously disappearing docket. So you want to check that out. We'll be back right here on the No State Project. Don't go away.